Oh, wait. Okay. Hi, Noelle Janka.
Hi, Lindsay Wolff.
So, Noelle is a friend of mine who started out being a coach. Gosh, how many years ago was that? Like 7, 8 years ago?
Hmm.
And has developed into a close friend. And I feel really passionate about sharing her message with the world because she's just written a new book, which I think everyone needs to know. I have it right here. Rebel Healing: Transforming Ourselves and the Systems That Make Us Sick. And yeah, I think it's a really radical book and I've read all the healing books, believe me.
You
And
really
I
have.
I really have. And I don't think there are many books on the market with this really powerful message. So I think Noelle deserves the spotlight to just share her message. And Noelle, anything else you want to say about yourself and who you are?
Thanks, Lindsay. I think, like you and a lot of people in our community, I have been living with chronic health challenges for a really long time. So I guess just wanted to highlight that. Um, people people talk about writing books when they have expertise, and it's taken me a while to claim that being sick for 22 years is a certain kind of expertise. So yeah, I think I just want to name that. And I've been a coach for 8 years, supporting people with their healing and their career development.
Totally. I think there is a factor of intimidation when you go to write a book on such like a health in the field of health because there's so many experts out there, but I totally think of you as one of the leading experts. And honestly, at this point, one of the few people I would trust with this subject because you have lived it. So many even doctors, thank God for them, but haven't experienced chronic illness, but then they can, write a book from a medical perspective. It just doesn't like hold the same authority.
Mm.
So I read your book and was like, I mean, it's just so clear that you clearly understand this, like on a daily and like the excruciating nature of having a chronic illness for so long. So, and thank you for being brave enough to write about it. I mean, that's the hardest, most vulnerable thing. So thank you so much for this gift that we all get to read. And when is your book coming out? Remind me of that.
The 19th of September.
Okay, yay, so soon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start with the theme of connection.
Mm.
That's like really woven through every chapter of your book. Do you want to start talking about what that means to you?
Yeah, sure. I think I want to couch it in sort of like a slightly bigger frame and then come back to it if that's okay. So, like you, I read a lot of the healing books, and I felt like there were some things that felt really important in what it really takes to heal that weren't in the healing books. There's a lot of memoirs where people tell their story, and there's a lot of books on how to heal. And I felt like there weren't books that were looking at how to heal in context. I think there's sort of three things missing from most conversations about healing. One is context, one is connection, and another one is intuition. And so in terms of context, like there's a reason that more than half of the people who live in this country have at least one chronic illness, right? Because and you can trace it all the way back to kind of the first colonizers of this land, right? This land was well, this country was built by folks who were practicing genocide and enslaving people. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. And that legacy is still living in our bodies today, and it's still in our systems, and it's still creating situations that don't privilege life and that don't privilege well-being. And so I think it's important for people to realize that, because so many of us with chronic illness, we end up spending a lot of time at home and a lot of time alone, and it just feels like we're sort of being left out of this whole thing. But that's because of the way it's set up, and there's a reason that we have ended up in this position, and it's because this society, these systems aren't set up to help us be well or to help us get better if we get sick, right? So we could talk about that for days, but I'll just leave it right there. And I think part of what that situation, that environment has created is just a lot of disconnection. And people are probably familiar with the book Bowling Alone, Robert Putnam, I believe, and the premise of that is just sort of that there's been this massive decrease in social capital as people, fewer people are going to church, there's fewer community groups, there's just fewer kind of places, and even more so since the beginning of the pandemic, where people can come together. And that's created sort of on a broad scale, like not, outside of just people with chronic illness, like a lot of people just don't feel connected. A lot of people feel alone with their experience, feel alone with their feelings, feel like just generally alone. And then that was already true and already much worse for people with chronic illness. And I think it's not just connection from each other. The way that our society is set up keeps us disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from for a lot of us, disconnected from our ancestry. We're not as in touch with the divine because fewer and fewer of us are part of religions. We're not as connected with the land, again, because the original colonizers were like practicing extraction and not, respecting the land. So I think part of what I'm trying to say in the book is that both on an individual and a collective scale, we really need to work on reconnecting, or connecting for the first time, connecting with the land, connecting with the earth, connecting with our ancestors, with each other, with our bodies. And that's not just going to help us individually in healing, health challenges and living better with health challenges, but it's going to be sort of the bedrock for what helps us survive the climate crisis and everything that's going on in the world right now, right? So September 2023, like who knows what's going to happen, a few months from now, but like things already feel like pretty bananas, hurricanes, earthquakes, school shootings, like I think a lot of us understand that that's only going to get worse. And so it feels like connection is a really important bedrock for how we move forward from here. And then I'll just briefly touch on intuition, because there are books about cultivating your intuition. I haven't yet found a book that's like healing that focuses on how much intuition is a part of healing. And that can be not just healing health challenges, but I think healing more broadly. And I think an important part of that is unlearning societal scripts that get in the way of us being able to really tune into ourselves and what's true for us. And the other piece is when we can be more connected to ourselves, we can get the information that we need to heal. Like our bodies will tell us what we need, even if what they're telling us is you need to find somebody to help you do this. And then you can ask yourself, okay, how do I find that person? I mean, there's so much wisdom there. And I also think of our intuitions as like this portal into this like massive collective algorithm. So we're not just like accessing our own wisdom when we consult our intuition, but we're accessing the wisdom of our ancestors, we're accessing the wisdom of the land, or accessing the wisdom of the broader collective in the here and now. And I have found in my own healing that like that's where the good stuff is. Like when I am consistently asking my intuition what to do, life is so good. And when I stop doing that, things go badly.
Yes.
Things go poorly, right? Like I didn't ask my intuition about getting the first COVID vaccine. I was just listening to my brain and my heart that were like, I want to see everyone, so I'm going to do it. And everyone in the Lyme groups was like, oh, get the J&J because, people are having fewer reactions to that. So I was like, cool, done my research. I'm going to do the thing. Didn't consult with myself. Had a massive reaction that's made me sick for like 2 years now. So I just really believe in that.
Yeah. You really have to, I mean, I had the same thing with the vaccine experience. I really did a people pleasing thing, even though my health team naturopath was like, do not do this. And I did it. And I went to a fucking Walmart to do it, which just felt like just the rock bottom experience. And I had the same thing, because when you're in this model for so long, had I had the gifts and the skills to live with or to make medical decisions from my intuition, like I would have saved myself so much of what you call in the book, like the chase. like going from doctor to doctor. I have seen over 100 doctors, some of the best in the country.
Yeah.
I've moved to Seattle. I was in a trial for 3 weeks at Vanderbilt. I, you know, it's so disconnecting already to have a chronic illness, but when like from your body, but when you I feel like that's one of the tragedies that people in this community really have lost the skills and even the awareness to check in with their intuition, because they're so reliant on the authority of medical people, medical figures, practitioners. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts of your book and working with you in coaching, because somehow our bodies do know. And it's like, it's so mysterious and amazing that they do. But and you really have to build a skill of trusting that somatic experience of like asking yourself, should I get this vaccine or should I try this drug? And even when it doesn't make sense, like even if your body's sort of, for me, when my body says no, it's like kind of this ache in my upper chest, like understanding the signature of what means no and yes in your body is really huge. But of course, I've been in this game 14 years and I'm just like honing this skill. And it's pretty crazy. Another thing I was wanting to say about the connection part is like, we're so disconnected from each other. And a big thing I've gotten from what I've read of your book is like, I have disconnected myself from the identity of somebody with a chronic illness a lot, because when we get into a stage of healing, when we're doing like brain training, I'm doing Primal Trust, and I know you've done DNRS. The whole message there is like, disassociate from this identity. And some programs do that. I think Primal Trust does that really well in terms of like creating. But in reading your book, I was like, I realized I have very few people in my life who have any kind of health issues. And no wonder I feel insane all the time, because I'm disconnected from that community, and everyone in my life is able to just crank out an 8-hour day and then go get a drink after work and go work out. And I'm like, no way. And so I just really think you are offering some really necessary guidance for how important it is to have people in our life who are reflecting the same experience. And and there's some denial going on when we're like, I'm noticing that in myself. Like I'm really resisting, like, no, I don't have a chronic illness. No, I'm healing. But I'm like, actually, I do. And it really sucks. And I need help. So thank you for just like showing me that, like how valuable that is, and how like collectively and systemically we need to like own this and own how many people are suffering right now.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for raising this piece. I mean, it's kind of tricky, right? Because I do think that like you said, I did DNRS for 6 months, and I think that there was value for me in that. And like I even took a break from coaching people with health challenges. Like I really just like, changed my life. But there's a way in which though you could even think of some of those programs as kind of ableist, right? And like this is part of what inspired me to write the book too, is like when you go to support groups, like they sound like a lot of what people say sounds really ableist. It's like being sick is the worst thing ever. It ruins your life. It makes you less than a human. People don't say it just like that, but that's kind of the implication of what they're saying. And I was like, this seems really bad, because it's like, even though like there's like, you're putting yourself in this, like, in these brain training programs, you're supposed to be putting yourself in this like happy soup. There's also part of you saying that that's like not important, or like that's not valid, or like, this is something that needs to change, that needs to be escaped, which, or I do feel like for some of us, there's some of that happening at the same time. So I'm still like, I still see that both are important, but I think that I do think it is so easy to miss the opportunities for connection when we're in these kinds of, where we're in this, like, these states of denial, as you said, because there's just so much beautiful collaboration and camaraderie and being the opportunity to be seen when we are, telling the truth about how we're feeling with other people who really get it,
Yeah,
um,
totally.
yeah, like I think I mentioned this in the book, but it still feels so real. Like I went to an open mic for people with Lyme once, and it was just so special to be in a room full of a couple hundred people who were just laughing at the same jokes and the kind of thing that nobody who hadn't had that experience would understand. Or like I was laughing on the phone with a couple of my Lyme buddies once, and we were like, man, like I just want to eat ice cream and cake and like fried chicken. And we're like, well, I guess we'll go drink some water. Which is like an experience that so many people don't get because they get to eat whatever they want all the time.
Totally.
So yeah, thank you for highlighting that. I do think there's a lot of value in everybody kind of checking in with themselves at different points and being like, is this a time for me to be in community and in acceptance of what's happening? Or is this a time for me to be like, I am well and I am healing? Because I think there is value in both.
Yeah. Okay, so another piece of this whole conversation is like, I don't know, even we'll see how it fits into what we're just talking about, but you put a strong emphasis in coaching and in the book about having like a healing vision statement. And so like I want to pause on or like think about that together because it is important to have a vision of yourself. It really is. It's like it's important to hold both, right? Like this really sucks and I'm super limited and the hope and like the maybe hope isn't the right word, but the vision. So tell us about why that's important.
Yeah. This is another one that can be a little bit tricky, right? Because you also don't want to gaslight yourself.
Oh,
But I want to encourage folks to think about healing more broadly, right? So it's not the vision isn't necessarily like in 2 years I'm going to be able to do a triathlon, even though I'm bedridden now. I didn't mean to say bedridden. I hate that term, bedbound. But so I want to encourage folks when writing a vision statement to think about it as like maybe it's more like I experience more joy and I experience more ease and I have more fun and that kind of thing, where it's like a little less dependent on what our bodies do because we only have so much control over what happens in our bodies. But I think we have a lot of control over how we're showing up, how we bring in support, who's on our team, how we structure our days, that kind of thing. And so I think the value of a vision is to give yourself a North Star so that you know what you're working towards, and that it gives you, and this can be really challenging for people. The act of writing a vision gives you an opportunity to lean into what might be possible, kind of your wildest dreams. And sometimes people like they try to start doing that and they just can't. They're like, I cannot see beyond the moment that I'm in. And I think that's fine too, right? Like I think sometimes it takes a while to get there. But I think giving yourself the opportunity to imagine different possibilities is a really beautiful healing exercise in itself. And then you can look at, okay, so if this is what I'm really longing for, right? Like identifying longings is also something that we sort of have a strange relationship with in this culture. I think it's, and those of us like, excuse me, socialized as women, and other people get socialization that's like your longings aren't that important, other people's needs are more important than yours, etc. So I think even just leaning into longing is like a great healing exercise in itself and sort of like a radical action. But in terms of like thinking about it from the perspective of like if I'm working with somebody as a coach, the value of the vision is it helps us figure out like what we're working towards, and then we can set goals and actions based on that vision. It's also really valuable as a tool for checking in with your intuition. So like, for example, if you learn about a new healing practitioner, you can sort of, and you have your written vision statement, you can kind of ask yourself like, okay, body, like, is this healing practitioner going to support me in making this vision real? And just like see what comes up. And you might get, like in your case, like a clear no. And that's just a really valuable tool to have in your toolbox.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I want to talk more about a big chunk of your book about like just the systemic factors that are kind of warring against us and that set us up for chronic illness. And the reason I wish people knew this, and I wish I knew this a long time ago, is it just brings us back to like, a lot of this isn't our fault. Like, we are set up on so many levels. And when I read that part of your book, I'm just like, I like, again, in the body, I like melt a little bit because I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, and you also talk about bootstrap wellness theory. We could talk about that a little bit more, but like, we are, and not in a victim way, but like, there are so many structural systemic things about our society that like have primed us to get here, that 20 plus years sick, me over a decade. Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, great. Where should we start?
Let's start with this experience of coming down with an illness that doesn't go away. And a lot of people I hear in the chronic illness world talk about like, it's so important to understand why you got sick, the behaviors, the emotional parts, the toxicity. And for me, it was going through a horrible breakup, having no support, no medical attention in college. I just like didn't even think about it. I didn't even know if I had like insurance that would cover any kind of like therapy or anything. So I just like was kind of a zombie. And then I lived in a really moldy house. I was bit by a tick when I was a backpacking guide in Colorado. And it's like, I think the lack of medical support is one of the systemic things, but it's like I wasn't even raised in a mindset that has any of this on my radar, I guess. And that's the like collective awakening, I think, is so important for prevention. Like the toxicity we live with, the hustle culture you write about. That's a huge part of something I'm still working with. There's so many things you list in the book that are toxic, but so not like normalized, but super toxic that we have made. I mean, it's kind of like, well, what isn't toxic, at this point? I don't know. I'm sure you can fill in more of what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think what really stuck out to me in what you were sharing about your experience was the lack of support.
Yeah.
And I know when I got sick when I was 15, we went and saw a lot of doctors and they were like, take some prenatal vitamins and stop being stressed out. It's basically what they said. And I was like, okay, so I guess, not being able to read, having knee pain and being exhausted all the time and like huge mood swings is just like normal, because apparently like these people can't help me with it. And I also like, I think like part of what you're saying is I didn't think to like to push back. I didn't think to ask the adults in my life that like for more help. I just didn't think that there were any other options. And so I think like one of the things that I am hoping the book helps with is changing the way that we think about care and support. Because I think that, I don't know, I just want other young people to feel like they can pull people in and be like, I know that this isn't right. I know that I shouldn't be feeling like this. Like, can you help me? Can you make me a sandwich? You know, like something,
Yeah, right.
can you give me a ride somewhere or something, you know, because there's so much suffering that I think is unnecessary. Even if we sort of like take the, you know, the medical system out of it, just like the way that we treat these things on like a social community level, I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities for that to change. For like, you know, how great would it have been if somebody had told either one of us like, oh, you've been feeling sick, maybe you should rest, you know? Like,
Yes.
what an
Yes.
incredible thing that would have been. It only took me, you know,
Oh,
18-20 years to figure that out. Um, so
I'm still figuring that out. I mean, yeah, the first year I got Lyme and was, as you say, bedbound, I like was Googling grads. I was studying for the GRE, all bedbound. You know, I was applying to grad schools. I was like tremendous resistance to what was happening.
mhm.
And I was like, I mean, just if someone had been like, hey, your body is in like a major crisis, and this is such a critical window for you to actually like have mental and physical rest. Like, I mean, and maybe that's the stages of grief you have to go through, but it was like every cell in my body was like, I will not be sick. This is not happening. And then it just kept going on for years and years. And but like, yeah, the spiritual care of actually having like voices in our society that are like, no, like they're your body is actually intelligent, and it's having a process right now, and it needs to like complete the process. But for you to do that, you need to actually like chill out and like receive it and allow it,
Mhm.
and not so much put so much pressure on yourself. um I'm still learning that, and I'm, you know, it's really hard. And especially, and I got sick when I was 22, and I felt like my life was just sort of starting, and I had, yeah, it was very devastating. I mean, 15 is just as devastating, horrible. So,
Yeah, and like, wouldn't it have been nice if there had been places for us to go and feel seen in our
yeah,
experience and
yeah,
validated?
totally.
So
Emotional
that,
validation is everything. Yeah.
because then we might have treated it as something real instead
Yes.
of something we had to ignore and endure.
Yeah. And maybe a little bit less of like a crisis. I know my family was really in crisis, and um it was a crisis though. You know, it was a total collapse of health. And so you know, it's always easier to see things retrospectively, but I I wish I had that gift of intuition, as we keep returning to. Like, I think I would have been much more in touch with, oh, this is actually like I literally have to surrender to this.
Mhm.
And not watch so much Dexter in my parents' basement, which was not a good move. Like, what was it? I don't know. I was just so depressed, so like disembodied. So, what else, Noelle? There's so much to say.
Yeah, I think just piggybacking on that, like one of my, you know, visions for the world is that, or for this country in particular, is that we, you know, find ways to set up communities of care so that when people get sick,
Mm,
it's not like they either have to live in their parents' basement or just keep working and try to figure it out. Like, you know, it
wow.
would be awesome if people could actually get disability when they needed it, but
Mm,
that's so often that doesn't happen. And then, you know, people people die because of that, you know, because not everyone has a place to go or people to take care of them. And so I don't know, my vision is that we figure that out even without the government, that we, you know,
mm,
somehow maybe come back to the village model where like people aren't left behind and people don't fall through the cracks. And it
yes.
isn't a constant crisis when somebody gets sick, because people get sick. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like it's like we treat illness as this thing that's like it happens and then people get better and everything's great, but so many people that's not the case. And
Yeah.
part of the reason they don't get better is because they don't have the support that they need to get better. And
Yes.
I just think even and like, yes, people need medicine, but I think for so many people, if they knew that they could get sick and it wasn't going to be like this like threat to their survival financially, then maybe they maybe it wouldn't turn into a chronic illness, you know, like, or
Yes.
maybe just, I don't know, so many things would be different if that could be different. So
Totally.
I'm hoping maybe the book helps, expand the conversation about what we can do to take care of each other when we get sick.
Yeah, it's fun to dream about like what that would look like in like grounded practical ways. Like for me, I think I needed like a year off, not to have to work, somewhere to nature. Like I needed the belief and the mindset of like pressure's off, you
Right.
know, and um and then the belief that my body can actually like complete this, that some people call it like cell danger response, like to complete this process. And I feel like I got that all those factors when 3 years ago my husband and I moved to Seattle and we worked on a farm, and I was working with my Lyme specialist, Dr. Wakely, and naturopath. And I felt amazing for those 6 months. And I honestly, I love you, Dr. Wakely, but I think it was a lot, I was getting good medical support from him. But I think honestly, the greatest medicine is I had all these factors. I had a low responsibility. I was in a beautiful Pacific Northwest farm. I had a really funny roommate who kept me laughing all the time.
Mm.
And I mean, that was when my body started to heal and I was feeling, and I was going to the ocean every day. And
Mm.
my husband was working. Thankfully, I mean, before I had Nate, I was in an even worse position. And then we came back to St. Louis where we live, and my health crumbled again. And it made no sense. And so there's something so radical about, and I wish for everyone that they could have those rare set of circumstances and settings that could just like allow the body that relief mode.
Mm-hmm.
I think Primal Trust, I will give a plug to them, does the best job out there in helping people access that and wherever
Mm.
they're living. But there's just, yeah, could there be a place in our society where you could just collapse for a while and it would be okay? That's the dream. That's my dream.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the dream I've had for a long time too.
Yeah. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just the reality is the total opposite of that. It's
Yeah.
trying to get disability and getting denied. For me, it was like living in really shitty apartments and living on food stamps and scrounging money together. It was just like that for me for a really long time. And I had a lot of family support, but it was really hard to be independent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I want to read one thing that this line in your book I really love. It says, some people will see you taking care of yourself and freak out. They're in a critical wonder. Oh, I think I have a typo. Well, they're wondering, who do you think you are spending so much time on healing? That's just their societal programming taking I'm sorry, Noelle. I feel like I wrote this when I was so excited writing
That's
about your
okay.
book. Um, it's basically about this threat that people feel when they see you taking and prioritizing your healing. This
Mm-hmm.
is on page 86, and I can even look it up because this is like such an awesome idea that I do want to get right. Okay, it's, well, we're gonna have to circle back to that. I'm so sorry.
That's
Here
okay.
it is. Some people see you taking care of yourself and freak out. Their inner critic will wonder, who do you think you are spending so much time on healing? That's just part of their societal programming talking. It's not about you. Part of the reason this whole healing thing is so hard is that so many people feel like they have to hide their illness, pain, and other struggles. When it's all under the radar, we have no idea how many people are in the same boat as us, and we miss out on the opportunity to support each other. I think that is, um, when we talk about like the dream situation for healing, like for me, it's like that getting over the shame of like being somebody whose life is all about taking care of themselves
Mm-hmm.
and getting over what people think about that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, it can be very shaming.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we like imagine this future where like people are actually getting well, I hope that we can, people listening who may know people with chronic illness can just like root them on so hard in the sacrifices they have to make and the lifestyle they have to live and like the part-time work they're trying to create, because like it is such an invisible lonely journey. um And a lot of that shame is part of our culture, part of the sickness we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think we need to also love and celebrate and cheer on the people that are never gonna feel better, that are never gonna be able-bodied, because that's just
Yes.
the reality for a lot of people. And I think normalizing that is, part of the anti-ableism work that
Yes,
we need to do as well.
that's so true.
It's just normalizing that, like, some bodies need a lot of care. And that
Yes.
doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. It doesn't mean that they're less valid. Like, like those people are still like beautiful souls who contribute to society.
Yes.
Like my friend Heather, who is no longer with us, who I dedicated the book to, like, she maybe had like a good hour every day, like on good weeks, and she still contributed so much. Like, she's such a beautiful soul, and she did not get the care and the support and the validation and acknowledgement that she deserved at all. And I just I want that for everybody, and I think it's really important to bring in folks who like are disabled from birth into that conversation too, because
Yes.
like they are also just so marginalized in so many ways,
Yes.
systemically and socially. And so I think that's like, that was part of why I wrote about disability in the book too, is because I think like we have a lot to offer folks that have always been disabled, and they have so much to offer us. And I think that we can gain so much personally and politically by, being buds, being allies, being in community together.
Yeah, I think that's a important thing to call out about your book. It's like when you talk about healing, and you've said this a little bit before, it's not about physical healing. It's about like the suffering that we're adding to the pain, and making our lives easier, and making yeah, having more of a voice for what we need, getting support, asking people in our lives to help us, or finding like other forms of support. But it's certainly not about this like, this day when we're all like physically whole and capable and doing triathlon. That's just not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So, and that can be a really big relief actually to me, like um again, takes the pressure off of like this, what you write about later, like bootstrap healing, just like it's all on me, I've got to do it, I've got to figure it out, I have to fix this. um and just like that's the sad sweet part of being alive, is some of this we just don't know, we don't know why this is the way it is, and it's really tough. And if you're born with a disability, that's not helpful to imagine that kind of like whole physical healing, of course. So um what else, Noelle? Is there anything else you'd love to share about your book and your journey?
Well, I think just because you mentioned it a couple times, bootstrap wellness theory is not something that I came up with, but something that I share in the book, somebody else's brilliance. And I think part of that theory that I think is important for all of us, especially us, sick folks and disabled folks, to remember is like it's just, there's like, I think something that a lot of us struggle with is this idea that like if you're not productive, at a particular level, then you're not contributing. And I think part of what the amazing human who came up with that theory was trying to say is that like meritocracy is a lie, and like all of us are valid, all of us are contributing. And part of what actually, the original title of the book was Healing as a Contribution, because I think it's still one of the chapter titles, but I just really want folks to, if nothing else, like start to internalize that like just taking responsibility for the way that you show up in the world, which is another way that you could define healing, is such a contribution. It's a massive contribution, because that in itself is like a radical act that like pushes against this legacy of oppression that we are living inside of. And so just saying like I'm willing to lean into connection, I'm willing to ask for support, You know, even though everything in this society is set up to, you know, let me die and like not care about me, like I'm gonna lean into joy, and I'm gonna figure out how to laugh, you know, like that's huge. And that not only helps your physical health, but everybody around you. And so therefore it's a contribution to your community. And maybe by leaning into those things, you find you have a little more resource. And that's a contribution too, because then you get to contribute more to the folks around you, feel more connected, etc. So that's, I think, just one more thing I wanted to underscore for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about, like, I feel like you're really masterful at tending to the soul in setbacks. And
Mm.
and I'm thinking of that as you talk about joy, because I think that those things kind of go in tandem. And I know you talk about you've had major setbacks. You have gotten a concussion, you've gotten Lyme again, you got recently were bit by a tick again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've had a vaccine injury. And I really want to hear from you about what you've like cultivated in your like skill set with like moving through seriously hard setbacks,
Mm-hmm.
because that is, yeah, love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. As you're speaking, I'm just like, I don't know if I really learned anything about that, but that's probably not true. One of my favorite healers, Tommy Priester, who was an herbalist who really brought me back from a dark place.
Mm,
Like I couldn't really walk or stand when I met him, and I was running like a couple weeks or a couple months after meeting him. But he used to say all the time like that. You know, even though he's like has all this healing wisdom, as soon as he gets sick, he forgets everything that he knows. Like it
yes.
just all goes out the window. And so I just want to normalize that too. Like even like, you know, even I think the most advanced healers can get thrown when there's setbacks. And so I think learning to give myself compassion in those moments has been huge. And but just really pulling in support, you know, like I know you do co-counseling. That is something I've been doing for I think 3 years this month. And wow, like to have multiple people that I can call at any moment or text at any moment and just move through my feelings, like feel my feelings and move through them. It's like just so great. And for me, like just pulling in enough support that I don't feel alone.
Yeah.
Has been really huge. And I had to do some significant spiritual and psychological work to even be able to let support in. Like I
Mm,
used to be like, I have all these friends, but like at the end of the day, like none of them actually give a shit about me. Like that was just like 100% how I felt about everything. But I think something I've learned in the most recent setback around the vaccine injury is like I'm actually like letting people in. Like I'm reaching for people more, and I'm not as ashamed. I'm just like, I need you. Like come
yes.
hang out with me while I cry, which is something that
Yes.
I just could not do. I could not imagine doing it for so long. So I think, yeah, I think that's if what's changed for me and what I have really tried to support clients with is like getting the barriers to asking for and accepting support out of the way, and really just like trying to practice pulling people closer and not being alone with the
Yes.
experience.
I find that when you're in those really rock bottom times, calling a friend in a really vulnerable place, it can feel so hard. And I just want to normalize that too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm in that now. I have a concussion. I can't drive. I'm out of work. And I'm like, the level of vulnerability I feel is like, I still am honestly kind of shocked that I'm still feeling so vulnerable about this, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the hardest thing I think of being in this life path.
Yeah.
And I I'm really sad about that. Like, why? Like, I know my friends love me so much. And just now, 5 months into a concussion, I'm starting to ask friends for rides. I'm like, come on. Like, everyone in your life wants to like help you, and you just as much as you want to help them. And I just wish we could all get over that. Like, it's just,
May it be so.
may it be so. Like, goodness, that is not serving any of us. And I think that the more we can model like that need to people, they feel more comfortable, even if they're totally able-bodied, to show up more vulnerably. Like, that's the like infection I hope will spread with this whole conversation, because I would have alleviated myself so much just mental anguish if I could just be like, can you pick me up for like a 10-minute car ride? I mean, it's ridiculous, but and it takes so much pressure off my husband too. Like, it's just yeah, there's just this real illusion in our world that everyone's just independent, capable, fine, doing great, and we're just not. None of, even if you're totally healthy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Individualism is the worst.
yeah.
But yeah, the other thing I just wanted to say about that is I think that it's like setting yourself up to get support in an easeful way is a long game.
Yeah.
Right. So like and I think that there's part of that is like Adrienne Maree Brown in Emergent Strategy talks about building deep relationship. And I think that that's a really important part of this, right? Because it's not just about you calling your friend tomorrow and asking for a ride. It's about like you and other people establishing a relationship in which you can do that and neither one of you feels shame. Right.
Yes.
And so sometimes that you have to like sit down with your friends and be like, can we just decide that we're going to fucking help each other? And it's not going to be a thing. You know,
Yeah.
I've literally done that with some of my friends and it's been really sweet. It was totally worth it. And sometimes we had to like work through all of our own, like, but, you know,
Yeah.
and because there are people who will just like they will just show up, you know, but a lot of folks you know, for all different kinds of reasons don't do that, but it's not because they don't want to. So I think I just wanted to highlight that too. Like, I think this is something that we can choose and we can like invite other people into and figure it out together. And sometimes it can be messy, but I think it's worth wading through the mess together.
It's so worth it. I feel like it's a survival skill. It's like we have to get better at this collectively. It's just crazy. And we're going to need it more and more. And normalizing that, yeah, I just that will set me free the day I can just do that with more ease. And I think that goes the same for like showing up that way at work. You know, that's a whole nother thing, showing up with family members, but the work thing is tough because it's like asking what you need there and asking for support. It feels super duper vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of people with chronic illnesses end up working for themselves, because you just get so tired of that bullshit of it's really just your own. For me, it's been my own shame of like, I work with a very able-bodied crew of people, and it's just can be really, really discouraging for me because I'm reminded continually of like the ability I don't have. And I have to give myself props for showing up and like doing something I really do enjoy, but it also like can be really hard on the heart.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. So I've worked in all kinds of spaces, and I really have to practice some like emotional discharge with like, wow, I'm not like that. And it's really sad. And shit. And I wish I were. And it's just, it's very like grief inducing. So
for sure. And not to mention the emotional labor of teaching your coworkers what you need and how your body works. And like, I cannot even tell you how many I had a really sweet part-time job at Harvard for a couple of years. And not too long ago, and I can't tell you how many conversations we had just about what I ate.
Wow,
Like,
yes.
people were like, how do you live? And and like, I taught some folks about ableist language, and like I had to,
Yeah.
advocate for a particular desk setup, and like, we don't really talk about how, like, teaching, I think it reminds me, it's not the same, but it reminds me a little bit of like when people of color are in all white spaces and they talk about being the only. I think that that's true for that can be true for sick and disabled people too, is like, it can feel really isolating. There's all this stuff that like you can't talk about with anybody else, and you're constantly having to teach everybody else about your experience, or you don't tell people about your experience because you could risk getting fired because it's not in the
Yeah.
norm, right? There's a whole bunch of dynamics.
Yes.
I think we could probably write a whole nother book about disability and sick and chronic illness at work.
Yeah. Yeah. Making money, just like surviving. It's a huge subject that I until this current job I had, like, didn't ever really tell any of my employees that I had any kind of health issues going on. And I would have insane pain and be up to like 3 or 4 in the morning writing emails to my boss being like, I can't come to the 7 a.m. meeting, at sending an email at 3:30 in the morning. They probably thought I was just like partying all night, but I definitely wasn't. And I just like look back and like, what was I doing? I guess it just felt so vulnerable for me to tell them I had anything going on with my health.
Mm-hmm.
But so let that be, I don't know. So maybe someone else out there can just hear that and feel a little bit more inspired to like share themselves with the people they're working with. And um, well, let's conclude, Noelle. Let's end and just I want to just tie a little bow around this beautiful conversation and move back to connection and just that being the heart of all this we're talking about, like connecting with ourselves, connecting with each other, and just like I guess my blessing for your book is that, yeah, may this connect people, may this give people the courage to see that connection is where it's at, and we cannot do this by ourselves. The system is not set up that way, obviously, and we have to create it for ourselves. So thank you so much for just sharing your truth and sharing your really long suffering experience and making this beautiful message and book out of it.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing so much about your experience in this conversation, and always, you've been such a contribution to my healing journey and such a steadfast cheerleader for this book, and support in making this book real. So
yes,
thank you for that.
And tell us about, this is always what happens at the end of an interview, where people can find you.
Sure.
And about your upcoming program you're launching in early 2024.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as of September 19th, the book will be available on it'll be available as a free download on Amazon for 5 days. So
wow.
You can get it for free, review the book, help it become a bestseller. That would be awesome. But you can buy the book on Amazon or Bookshop, which is a way that you can support your local bookshops, which I really love. But it's also, I think you can find it at Barnes and Noble and Walmart and other places that sell books too. And you can request it at your library, or any bookstore should be able to order it for you. And then we're going to have a virtual launch party on the 21st. So you can find out about that and the book on my website. And yeah, I think partially inspired by working on this book and what I've done with clients in the last few years, I'm launching a membership program and an apprenticeship program in February, which is an opportunity for folks to cultivate their own personal and collective healing skills. And at the apprentice level, it's for folks who like kind of like you, Lindsay, for folks who've been in the game for a long time, have some experience, leading and facilitating others. I mean, you worked as a coach, so you are a healer, and it's a place for folks to come together and both build the skill of facilitating collective healing and also co-create new collective healing modalities with each other. So I'm really excited about that. And there's an application link on my website, noellejanka.com, for anyone who's interested in that.
Beautiful. What an awesome way to like help people live out what you're teaching, and or like, help people support all this, the concepts in your book, and like move and pass those ideas into the world. That's amazing. So
We'll
thank you.
see. Yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you for your time, Noelle. What a gift to talk to you. And I just encourage everyone to read Rebel Healing.
Thanks
That's
so
it.
much, Lindsay.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
bye-bye.
Bye.